I'd been driving trucks for over 20 years when I saw something on Rest Area 64 that still keeps me awake at night. You think you've seen everything on the road: wrecks, storms, people losing their minds after too many miles. But nothing prepares you for watching a girl run out of the darkness barefoot, blood on her hands, whispering, "They're coming, I swear to you." By the time I turned my headlights toward that restroom door, the night itself felt like it was holding its breath. There was a black van waiting by the tree line, no plates, engine running, and the look in her eyes. That wasn't fear. That was knowing. You want to know what really happened on Rest Area 64? What I found inside that van? Stick around, hit that like button, subscribe, and listen till the end. Because once I start telling you the truth, there's no turning back. The interstate unwound like a long gray ribbon through the plains, and Mark Boston let the miles climb over him the way tidewater works a shoreline. Slow, stubborn, inevitable. Night had not fully settled, but the light was slipping toward that indecisive in-between when the land goes the color of old coins. He kept the rig steady, a 30-ton habit he had learned after years of giving himself over to the road's quiet authority. Somewhere behind him, Omaha. Somewhere ahead, Albuquerque. Between them, the same playlist of towns and truck stops, the same scent of diesel and coffee, and the vague remorse that never burned off with morning. He was 45, and you would have known it by the way he favored his left shoulder when checking the mirrors, by the silver that had been honest about its business in his beard. 10 years before, he had been a different man, with a different house and a ring that meant something. Before that, he had worn a uniform with the country's name printed over his heart and a habit of scanning rooftops that he still could not shake. These days he slept upright more often than not, and his mailbox forward addressed to dispatch. Mark had learned that the road offered a kind of mercy to those who asked for nothing in return. You keep the wheels within the lines. You keep the load where it needs to be. You keep your voice down when the loneliness gets loud. You take exits that have the big blue signs with the little icons: fuel, food, the universal man and woman drawn like paper cutouts for the restrooms. And you pretend that those icons add up to a life. He tapped the steering wheel in time with a song he only half heard. The CB crackled with a long haul's chorus. Warnings about troopers, a weather tip out near Hayes, an argument about a college football game. But he had long stopped answering unless he had to. You could fill a day with talk that way and still not put 12 miles of company between you and your own head. The phone on the dash bloomed with an incoming call. At first, he thought it was dispatch again. Another drop window moved, another reminder about fuel. But he recognized the name, and his hands went colder on the wheel for a breath. "Hey, kiddo," he said, thumb swiping to answer. He tried to keep his voice easy, the way a man speaks when he's standing casually in the doorway and not 30 seconds from a way station. "Dad." There was an echo on her end, like a quiet room trying to remember itself. "Are you driving?" "Always am." He smiled because you do when the person you love can hear it in your voice. "You okay, Anna?" "I'm fine," she said too quickly. Then softer, "I'm fine. Mom's on a late shift. I just wanted to hear, I don't know, the road noise." She was in Lincoln. She was 19 and made of all the brave things he had not been at that age. When she was little, she used to call the highway's hum the ocean, and he had told her that was about right, that the world had its own tide. Now she was a sophomore with books he could not afford and ideas he did not understand. And he still wanted to tell her simple, sturdy lies about how it would all work out. "Nothing but ocean out here," he said. Checked the oil at the last stop. I'm babying this load like it's porcelain. I can hear it, she said. It makes me sleepy. Then sleep, he told her. You got class early? No, not tomorrow. Today was labs. We did something with electrons, and the professor asked why I picked biology and not physics. And I wanted to say because I'm already trying to understand one set of mysteries, and I don't need a second. He laughed gently, and he felt the distance between them fold a little. You always were the poet in the family? Yeah, she said. I got it from you. Not likely. Okay, she allowed. A breath. You staying safe? As church, he said, and then regretted the old reflex of a line meant to end a conversation. He added, I think I'll pull off at the rest area before the state line. Stretch my legs. Something cold to drink. If you do, don't get the jerky, she said. You always smell like pepper spray after. I'll try to resist. He hesitated, that old ache pressing at his ribs. Proud of you, you know that? I know. The echo shifted. He pictured her looking toward an apartment window, the way she did when she was trying not to get caught feeling anything. Text me when you stop, even if it's late. It's always late, he said, and then, softly, I'll text. Love you. Love you too, he said. And the line cleared to the sound of tires on the seam between lanes, the steady hush of America moving west. He rode in that silence a while, and a thought he had been avoiding reached him anyway. He talked to his daughter like a man who rented his place in her life month to month. He had signed the divorce papers with the same hand he used to salute and to shift gears. It felt like it weighed more afterward. The road leveled and became a drawn breath. The sign for rest area, 64, appeared, a blue promise just past a stand of cottonwoods that had learned how to lean against the wind. He signaled, checked his mirrors, habit as old as muscle, and coaxed the rig into the gentle curve that led to the loop. Car side left, truck side right, both halves divided by a ribbon of grass and a row of picnic tables no one used after dusk. A low building sat at the back like a bored librarian, its lights the color of vending machines. Mark eased into a truck slot and idled a minute to bring the engine's temp down. He logged his status, on duty, not driving, because the tablet expected to be told, then killed the engine. The sudden quiet rang in his ears. He sat there, hands on the wheel, as if the truck might buck without them, and watched his breath fog briefly in the chill that followed a long day's heat. Somewhere nearby, a reefer unit droned, steady as a heartbeat. He rubbed the ridge of his left shoulder, the old service ache that ghosted him when the weather changed. Over the years, he had learned to diagnose the sky by the way the joint announced itself. Stiff meant wind, stabbing meant rain, dull meant nothing but time. Tonight it felt like an index finger tapping his collarbone, counting down to something unnamed. The air outside held a crushed penny smell, metallic and dusty. He stretched with the open driver's door braced against his hip, one boot on the step, and felt the long muscles of his back answer with sparks. Over by the car lot, a family poured themselves out of a minivan like marbles. Mother hurting, father yawning. Two kids doing that frantic, celebratory run only children manage at rest stops. A sedan with out-of-state plates idled without lights. Another trucker, hat pulled low, smoked and stared into middle distance like he'd left his thoughts there on the last pass. Mark crossed the pavement toward the building. The light in the vestibule had that bug whiteness that flattens everything into equal importance. A corkboard with flyers, a map of the county with the shape of a lake and the dotted line of a nature trail, a poster reminding you to report suspicious behavior to a number. The font was too cheerful for the message. He tried not to look at the bulletin board. Missing persons, lost dogs, a church fish fry in a town that probably still called the grocery store the grocer. But his eyes went there anyway, the way you stare at a cliffside when you're trying not to think about falling. Faces stared back, laminated smiles that time had worked on without permission. He recognized none of them. He recognized all of them. He used the men's room and ran cold water over his wrists until his pulse steadied. The mirror showed him what he expected. An honest face that time had penciled crescents under the eyes of. A fatigue that looked permanent enough to forward its own mail. He could have told himself all the things men like him say alone in bright bathrooms. Gonna do better, gonna call more, gonna cut down on the roadside junk. But he had learned that vows made to tiles and paper towel dispensers dissolve before the door swings shut. Back outside, the sky had pressed closer. The last light was gone. The lot lamps had taken over, putting everyone on a stage whether they asked for it or not. He walked the truck once, a circle that was his liturgy. Tires, lines, lights, doors, seals. He listened to the night sounds that tell you if a rig is sleeping or whispering trouble. Everything answered in the register he trusted. He considered the vending machines. He heard Anna's voice. Don't get the jerky, don't get... He settled for a bottle of something neon that promised electrolytes like a preacher promises salvation. The first cold mouthful tasted like foreign fruit and cavity warnings. He laughed to himself and felt, briefly, human in a way that did not depend on the cargo manifest. When he climbed back into the cab, he lingered with the door open, letting in the smell of the prairie and cut grass and hot brakes. On the dashboard, his daughter's text arrived. 2 words, gentle as a hand on his forearm. "You safe?" He typed back. "Stopped. All good. Sleep." He almost added a heart, then didn't, and then did anyway. The little red shape looked ridiculous next to his name, so he left it. He flicked off the dome light and let the cab return to shadow. He did not have plans beyond sleep and miles. Tomorrow would be more of the same, but he had learned that the road's math made that tolerable. You add a little, you subtract a little, you never show your work. Something moved in the corner of his eye. Not the easy movement of people with permission to be where they are, but a quick, clipped darting. He looked toward the building, toward the row of bushes that made a half-hearted attempt to be landscaping along the walk. The feeling in his shoulder tapped again. He told himself it was nothing, that the night is full of shapes looking for edges. He reached for the curtain that would blind the sleeper and turned the truck into a small apartment with rules and a bed and a code of silence. He paused. There it was again, a flicker of presence, a figure cutting from the glare of the lobby light into shadow. He worked the curtain halfway across and stopped it there. A theater goer waiting to see if the first act was worth staying for. The figure reappeared, quick and low. A sprint that tried to be a swallow of air instead of a body crossing space. Soft steps against asphalt. He could not help it. He leaned forward, chin just above the wheel, and watched through the rectangle of glass that turned the world into a framed picture. The figure was small, maybe a teenager, maybe just a small adult. He thought, girl, then corrected to person because the night makes fools of anyone who decides too soon. She slipped along the parallel line of trucks, counting couplers and fuel tanks with her shoulder, the way a child counts fence posts. She did not want to be seen. That much was loud. He heard a door from the building open, voices a beat behind her in tone he recognized, not conversation, but coordination. And then another sound bent through the air, an engine coming up slow, then settling, like a big cat that had learned to walk without rattling brush. Mark sat very still. The bottle of bright drink sweated against the rubber of the cup holder. He put his palm flat against the dash as if to quiet it, or as if to remind himself what the world felt like when it was simple and inanimate. The figure, no, the girl, cut left and tucked herself into the wedge between his truck and the next. She went down into a crouch so neatly that it seemed she had practiced the move. He could not see her face, just the dark oval of hair and the pale arc of a forearm. She stayed where the truck's shadow made a small night inside the night. Voices again. A man laughed the way you do when the punchline is a mistake someone else made. The engine idled lower, then lower still, then went quiet enough that he knew whoever drove it had backed off the ignition, but not the need. He didn't have to see the vehicle to know it was black. Some machines acquire a color and carry it like a badge. Mark drew the curtain the rest of the way, slowly, until he left a slit he could see through. He had stood indoors like that in other countries, weapon against chest, waiting for the thing he did not want to happen to insist on happening anyway. He felt the old training rise, the way the mind takes inventory. Exits, tools, light, noise. He pictured the rest area as a plan view. Loops and lanes and the building that divided one night from another. He thought absurdly of Anna calling the highway the ocean, and for a moment he tasted salt that wasn't there. He had told his daughter he was safe. He had meant it in the way a man means a thing when he thinks the universe isn't listening. Now he sat in the suspended space where a choice begins, and the road outside took a breath with him, and the miles ahead narrowed to a moment that had nothing to do with delivery times or diesel receipts. The loop had brought him back to himself, whether he wanted it or not. The sound came first, a breath that wasn't his. Mark froze, every muscle in him remembering the language of danger before his thoughts could catch up. He turned his head slowly toward the passenger window. There, faintly lit by the glow of the parking lot lamp, was the outline of a girl's face. Just a fragment of it. One cheek, half a mouth, eyes wide and wet with fear. He opened the door quietly and stepped down into the cool Kansas night. The gravel crunched beneath his boots. The air was still, holding its breath with him. He crouched beside the truck, and now he could see her clearly. 17, maybe 18 at most. Thin to the edge of fragile, wearing a ripped sweatshirt and sneakers so caked with dust they might have been white ones. Her hands shook as she hugged her knees to her chest. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely cutting the silence. "Don't tell them I'm here." Mark's mind split into two roads, the instinct to help and the instinct to stay out of trouble. The latter had saved him plenty of times. But there was something about the tremor in her voice, the animal desperation of it, that didn't fit the picture of an ordinary runaway. "Who's them?" he asked quietly. Before she could answer, headlights swept across the lot. A dark van rolled in, slow and deliberate. No license plates, no company logo. Just a blank, black face moving between the parked rigs. The girl flinched so hard she scraped her elbow against his fuel tank. He saw the blood, just a small streak, bright as a warning. "Stay still," he murmured. He stepped back toward the cab, leaving the door open like a casual gesture. The van stopped 2 trucks down. 3 men stepped out. One of them carried himself like he was used to giving orders. The other 2 looked like they'd follow them, even if it meant burning down a church. "Evenin'," the lead one called out, voice friendly enough to make the hair on Mark's arms rise. "Sorry to bother you, brother. We're looking for a kid. Dark hair, gray hoodie. Probably ran through here a minute ago." Mark leaned against the open door, arms crossed. the picture of a man too tired to care. "Ain't seen anybody?" he said. The man smiled, thin and knowing. "You sure about that?" "Pretty sure." The man's eyes swept the side of the truck, and for a split second Mark thought the girl might move, give herself away. But she didn't. She was a shadow pretending to be smaller than air. "All right then," the man said finally, his tone all polite menace. "You see anyone, you call 911. She's confused, needs help." "Yeah," Mark said. "Don't we all?" The man's smile faltered. For a moment, Mark thought something violent might happen right there. 3 against 1, the night thick with diesel and tension. But then the leader gave a small nod, and they got back in the van. The headlights swung around, and the vehicle drifted out of the lot as quietly as it had come. Mark waited until the red taillights faded into the dark before turning back to the girl. She was trembling so badly, her teeth chattered. "You want to tell me what the hell that was?" he asked. She stared at him, breathing too fast. "Please, they'll come back." "Who are they?" "I can't." She stopped herself. "Please, just don't call anyone. Don't tell the cops." That last part made his stomach drop. People who were afraid of cops usually had good reason to be. He sighed and glanced around the rest area. A single streetlight hummed, throwing a circle of white light over a picnic table covered in graffiti. The world had gone back to being empty, but not peaceful. "All right," he said finally. "You can sit in the cab, just till we figure this out. It's warm in there." She hesitated, eyes darting toward the road. "You're not gonna—" "Kid," he said, his voice low, steady. "I'm not gonna hurt you." After a long second, she nodded. He opened the passenger door and helped her climb in. She moved like someone who expected to be struck at any second. Inside, the cab felt even smaller than usual. Her breathing filled it, quick, shaky, animal. Mark started the engine, not to leave yet, just to give them both a sound to hold on to. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she said, after a pause long enough to make him think she'd lie. "My name's Lily." "Okay, Lily," he said. "You got family? Somebody I can call?" She stared at the floor. "No." He could feel the question building in his chest, the one about what she was running from. But he didn't ask it. Not yet. She was a locked door, and the world outside was full of men who already had keys. The CB crackled suddenly, making them both jump. Some trucker's voice came through, laughing about a broken pump at the next rest area. Ordinary life, right there on the same frequency. Lily flinched and covered her ears. Mark reached over, turned the volume down to 0. "It's all right," he said. Her eyes were glassy now, but she didn't cry. Whatever she'd seen had already taken her tears. "You got anywhere to go?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "All right," he said. "Then you can stay till morning. After that, we'll figure out the next step." Her gaze flicked toward him, uncertain. "You don't even know me." He started to say something about decency, about doing the right thing. But the words felt too clean for this kind of night. Instead, he just said, "Guess I don't have to." She nodded, hugging herself tighter. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the trash cans, making them jump again. Mark leaned back, eyes on the windshield. Somewhere far off, thunder rolled low across the plains. He didn't know it yet, but that was the last quiet hour either of them would have, for a long, long time. The rest area lights burned like cheap stars against the Kansas night, throwing pale circles over the pavement and leaving everything beyond them to the dark. Mark sat in the driver's seat, the engine still idling low. The clock on the dash read 2:15 in glowing green numbers, but he read it as too late for common sense. Lily sat curled on the passenger side, eyes closed but not asleep. Every time a truck engine coughed somewhere in the lot, she flinched. The girl was wound so tight she might have shattered if he touched her. Mark drummed his fingers against the steering wheel, fighting the steady churn in his gut. He had no business being in this situation. He was a truck driver, not a damn hero. His job was to move freight, not fugitives. He thought about calling the police, doing the logical thing. Let them sort it out. Let them ask the questions, fill the forms, deliver her back to whoever. But then he pictured that black van. No plates, no markings. Those three men with the calm, confident eyes of people who knew they owned the night. And he remembered her voice. Please, don't tell them. He could hear the fear in it, but something else too. Certainty. Like she knew exactly what would happen if he made that call. He'd seen that look before. Overseas, in dusty towns with names that blurred together, women and kids who'd learned that the people coming to help weren't always the ones wearing the right flag. He sighed. Damn it. He reached for his phone. It was sitting in the cup holder, the screen reflecting a thin, ghostly version of his face. The signal bar flickered weak. He could try 911, but the thought made his stomach twist. If those men were part of something bigger, and he had a bad feeling they were, the girl wouldn't make it through the first night. He turned off the screen and dropped the phone back into the holder. Lily stirred. Are they gone? Yeah, he said quietly. For now. Her eyes found him in the dim light, cautious but searching. You're not calling anyone? No. She looked like she didn't believe him. You said you would. I said we'd figure it out, still figuring. She watched him for a long moment. You don't trust the cops either? He didn't answer. The silence between them said enough. After a while, she spoke again, her voice thin as thread. They take people. Girls mostly. From bus stations, motels, border towns. Some from foster care. They tell you you'll get a job or they'll help you get home. But then, she trailed off. Mark could see the rest of the story in her eyes. He didn't need the words. How'd you get away? I ran. She looked down at her hands, fingers whirring the hem of her sleeve. One of the drivers fell asleep at a gas station outside Wichita. I waited until nobody was watching, and I just ran. He nodded slowly. That explained the rawness in her voice, the panic in her bones. He'd seen men run like that before, too. From things you can't unsee. Where were they taking you? She hesitated. Denver. There's a place there. Some kind of house. They said it was for new arrivals. But I heard them talking in the van. It's not what they say it is. Mark felt his jaw tighten. Denver. He hadn't been there in a long time. Not since the divorce. His ex-wife, Maggie, worked there now, with a non-profit that helped women out of bad situations. She'd sent him pamphlets once, back when they still tried to talk. He never read them. He glanced at Lily. You trust me? She shrugged. I don't know. Good, he said. That's smart. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But if you want to stay breathing, you're getting out of here. Now. Her eyes widened. Where? Anywhere but here. He fired up the truck. The deep diesel growl filled the cab. Lily stiffened. They'll find us. Maybe, he said, checking his mirrors. But I ain't planning to make it easy. He rolled out of the parking lot, headlights off until they hit the ramp. Then he flipped them on and merged back onto the highway, the engine settling into its familiar rhythm. For a few miles, neither of them spoke. The road was a long black vein cutting through the dark, and the world outside the windshield was nothing but streaks of light and shadow. Mark could feel her staring at him. Finally, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" He thought about the question for a long time before answering. "Because you asked me to." "That's it?" He shrugged. "Sometimes that's enough." She didn't reply. She just turned her face toward the window, watching the world blur by. After a while, Mark said, "If you're hungry, there's a cooler under the seat. Sandwiches and water." She reached down, found the cooler, and ate without a word. It was the quiet kind of eating, the kind that came from habit, not hunger. He knew it well. The miles kept ticking. Finally, she said, "They won't stop. You know that, right?" "Yeah," he said. "I figured. You could still turn around, drop me somewhere, say you didn't know." He glanced at her. "Could you live with that?" She didn't answer. Neither did he. Outside, the wind had picked up, pushing against the cab like a warning. Lightning flared far off to the west, white and clean and silent. Mark tightened his grip on the wheel. For the first time in a long time, he felt something like fear. Not the kind that makes you freeze, but the kind that asks you who you really are when there's nobody left to answer for you. He wasn't sure he liked what it was asking. The Kansas highway stretched out like a scar under the first thin edge of dawn. The horizon was still a bruise, purple and gray, and the sky felt too wide, too empty. Mark's rig hummed along at 55, a steady pulse of diesel and fatigue. He'd driven through the night, eyes burning, nerves tight as cables. Lily had fallen asleep for maybe an hour in the passenger seat, her head tipped against the window. He told himself he'd stop soon. Maybe fuel up, grab coffee, figure out what the hell to do next. But the truth was, he didn't want to stop. Stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. The CB had been quiet for hours. Even the truckers had gone silent, as if the whole road was holding its breath. Then, in the mirror, a pair of headlights appeared. Small, far back, but coming fast. Mark watched them for a minute. Maybe just another hauler. Maybe not. He flipped off the cruise and let the truck coast, keeping the headlights in sight. They stayed steady for a while, then crept closer. Too steady. Too deliberate. "Lily," he said softly. She stirred, blinking. "What time is it?" "Time to wake up." She looked out the window, eyes still foggy with sleep. "Where are we?" "About 30 miles past Salina." He nodded toward the mirror. "You recognize that van?" She turned, and the blood drained from her face. "That's them." Mark felt the confirmation like a punch. "Thought so." The van was closer now, hugging the right lane, its lights unblinking. He downshifted, dropped speed, watching to see what they'd do. The van matched him, not passing, not falling back. Lily's voice shook. "They found us." Mark's mind clicked into the quiet, clean space it hadn't visited in years. The one that came from training, not panic. He'd learned long ago that fear was noise, and noise got you killed. "Okay," he said calmly. "We're gonna stay smart." He scanned the dashboard map screen. There was a service road about 2 miles up, one of those old county exits truckers used when they needed to dodge way stations. He'd used it years ago during a storm. It wasn't on the main grid anymore. "Hold on." He flipped the turn signal and took the ramp at speed, the trailer lurching behind them. Gravel spat out from under the tires as they hit the narrow side road. The van followed. Of course it did. "Seatbelt on," he said. She already had it. The road cut through low grasslands and old telephone poles leaning like drunks in a bar fight. The morning wind was rising, whipping dust across the pavement. The van's headlights disappeared behind them for a second, then reappeared, closer. Mark gunned it. The engine roared. The trailer bounced on the uneven road, but he kept it steady. His left shoulder throbbed, the old war injury, like it wanted to remind him that he wasn't 20 anymore. "Why are they chasing us?" Lily shouted. "Because you got away," he said, eyes locked ahead. "And people like that don't let things go. They'll kill you." Wouldn't be the first time someone tried. A half-mile ahead, a crossroads. He remembered this route. There was an old irrigation trail, barely paved, running west. He could take it, but the trailer was too heavy. He made a split-second choice, something pure and reckless. He hit the brakes hard, the truck groaning as it slowed. The van closed fast, thinking he was stopping. He swerved left at the last second, down the narrower road, and the van overshot, tires screaming. He saw it spin in the mirror, fishtailing, then correcting. "Come on, you bastard," he muttered. He kept the rig low and fast, weaving through the back road curves. Lily clung to the dash, silent now, eyes wide. For a minute, he thought they'd lost them. The road ahead was empty, the world waking up, gold lights spilling over the fields, birds lifting like black smoke from the trees. Then, in the mirror again, the shape returned. Smaller, a dot at first, then growing. They were back on him. Persistent sons of... He didn't finish. The road narrowed even more, turning into broken asphalt. Up ahead, a bridge, old, rusted, single lane. "Hold tight," he said. He hit the bridge doing 50. The whole rig shuddered as they crossed. For a second, the trailer felt like it might lift off the rails entirely. Then they were through, dust exploding behind them. When he looked again, the van had stopped short of the bridge. The structure wasn't strong enough for a vehicle that heavy. They sat there, headlights still burning, like wolves waiting on the edge of a river. Lily let out a shaky breath. Did we lose them? For now. He slowed down, pulling off onto a dirt path just beyond the tree line. The truck hissed as it settled. They sat in silence, both of them listening to the world. Only the ticking of the engine and the wind moving through the grass. Lily finally spoke. "You could have just left me." He didn't look at her. "Yeah, guess I could have. Why didn't you?" He stared at the horizon, where the sun was burning through the fog like a slow promise. "Because somewhere out there I got a daughter your age, and if she ever needed help, I'd want someone to stop." Lily looked at him for a long time, then turned toward the windshield again. "They'll come back," she whispered. "I know," he said. "That's why we're not stopping till Denver." She nodded, eyes wet but steady. Mark reached for the ignition again, the old ache in his shoulder pulsing in time with the engine's rumble. He looked once more in the mirror. The van was gone, but he could still feel it out there, patient, waiting. The road stretched ahead, endless, sun cutting across the plains. He shifted into gear, the truck rolling forward slow and sure. The chase wasn't over. It had just changed lanes. They stopped just outside a small town called Larned, a place that looked half forgotten even by the map that claimed it. The sun had climbed high enough to bleach the sky, and the air shimmered above the asphalt like the world was exhaling heat. Mark pulled the truck behind a shuttered diner, killing the engine. The silence came down heavy and full of dust. Lily climbed out, blinking against the daylight like someone who hadn't seen it in a long while. "You hungry?" he asked. She shrugged. "Always." He found a couple of cans of chili and a camping stove in his side locker. Old habits die hard. In the army, he'd learned to make hot food in cold places, to turn survival into something that looked almost like comfort. They ate sitting on the back bumper, the wind teasing the dust into lazy spirals. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the hum of distant highway traffic and the metallic clink of spoons against tin. Finally, Mark said, "You want to tell me the rest of it?" Lily looked down at the half-empty can in her hands. "You wouldn't believe me. Try me." She was quiet for a while. Then, "My dad used to fix cars. We lived in El Paso. He died when I was 15. Mom..." She disappeared not long after. They said she ran off. I didn't believe that, but nobody cared enough to look. Mark kept his gaze steady. "So, you ended up in the system?" She nodded. "Foster homes, group homes. Some good, some bad. Mostly bad." He waited. She took a deep breath, voice cracking a little. "When I turned 17, this woman came by one of the shelters. Said she worked for a placement agency. Helped older teens find jobs, apartments, rides. She was nice. Too nice, maybe. Gave me new clothes, a phone. Said there was work up north, restaurants, housekeeping. I wanted to believe her. I didn't have anywhere else to go." Her eyes drifted toward the horizon, where the wheat fields bent under the wind. "She put me in a van with 3 other girls. Told us we'd be in Denver by morning. But somewhere after Wichita, they changed drivers. The new guy didn't talk. He had a gun by the seat." Mark felt his chest tighten. "You try to get out?" "I did. Twice. First time they locked me in the back. Second time. I waited until they stopped for gas. The one in the passenger seat fell asleep. The doors weren't locked." She looked up at him, and for the first time, he saw the steel under her fear. "So I ran, and I didn't stop till that rest area." Mark exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "You did good. Most wouldn't have made it that far. I didn't have a choice." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Funny thing about choices. People always say you have them, but mostly you just pick the way that hurts less." He looked at her then, really looked. The smudges under her eyes, the way she sat half-turned like she was ready to bolt at any second. She was still just a kid, but the kind of kid the world forgot how to protect. Mark knew that kind too well. He reached into the glove box and pulled out a folded map, creased and soft with use. "Denver's about 400 miles west," he said. "I've got a route that'll keep us off the main interstate." Fewer eyes. Lily frowned. "You're really going to take me there?" He nodded. "Yeah, there's a woman I know. Works with a safe house downtown. She helps girls get out of bad situations." "Your wife?" He hesitated. "Used to be." She studied him a moment, as if trying to read the story between his words. "You think she'll help?" "I think she'll hate that I showed up," he said. "But she'll help you." Lily didn't smile, but her shoulders eased a little. They sat there until the sun leaned west. The diner's broken sign creaked in the wind. Somewhere, a train blew its horn, long and low. Mark checked the sky. "We should move. That van might have tracked our plates." "They'll never stop, will they?" she asked. He thought about it, then shook his head. "Not until someone makes them." Lily climbed back into the cab, and he followed. As the truck rolled onto the empty road, she asked quietly, "Were you ever in a war?" He kept his eyes on the horizon. "A couple, yeah." Did you kill anyone? The question was so calm, it didn't sound cruel, just curious. He took a long breath. Yeah, but that's not the part that sticks. What does? The faces you didn't save. She turned her gaze back to the road ahead. They drove in silence after that, the land flattening out into open prairie, gold and endless. The kind of landscape that made a person feel like a dot on a map drawn by God's shaky hand. As night began to fall, Lily finally said, "If we make it to Denver, will they stop coming for me?" Mark hesitated. They'll stop when they can't afford not to. She nodded, understanding more than a 17-year-old should. The headlights swept over a road sign. Denver, 312 miles. Mark tightened his grip on the wheel. He had no idea that the next time he saw that number shrink, he'd be bleeding. By the time they reached the outskirts of Garden City, the light had bled out of the world. The road was all shadow and wind, the horizon just a thin bruise of red fading into gray. Mark's truck hummed steady, but inside the cab the air was taut, thick with nerves and the kind of silence that doesn't rest. They'd been driving nearly 10 hours straight. The old road had turned into cracked concrete and ghost towns. Mark's eyes burned from staring into the dark, but he didn't dare pull over. Not yet. Lily sat with her knees tucked up, watching the dials glow. "You ever sleep?" she asked. "Not when I got company." "You make it sound like you do this a lot." He almost smiled. "Not lately." She looked out the window, the wind flattening her hair against the glass. "They'll find us again." "I know." "How?" "They're organized," he said. "This isn't 3 guys in a van. It's a route, a system. Someone keeps track of who moves, when, and where. We messed up their delivery. That costs somebody money." Lily's voice dropped. "So they'll kill us for that?" He didn't answer. Some truths didn't need air. He was just thinking about pulling off for fuel when his phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize. No name. He hesitated, then answered. "Yeah." Static, then a voice, deep, slow, a drawl that carried too much calm. "You made a wrong turn, driver." Mark froze. "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter. You've got something of ours. Girl, about 5'2", dark hair. She's scared. You don't need to die for her, cowboy." Mark's hand tightened on the wheel. "You've got the wrong number." A chuckle. "You think that CB code on your dash doesn't trace? Cute. You military, right? Thought so. You should have stayed retired." Then the line went dead. Mark tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. Lily's face had gone pale. "Who is that?" "Nobody." He started to say more, but stopped. The truth would only make her shake. He gritted his teeth. "We need a place to lay low, somewhere off-grid." She frowned. "You know a place?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, an old warehouse outside Dodge City. Belonged to a guy I used to haul with. Said I could use it if I ever needed to park overnight." Lily hesitated. "Can you trust him?" Mark's jaw worked. "We'll find out." They reached the warehouse just after midnight. The building crouched behind a line of freight cars and weeds. Metal siding rusted the color of old pennies. A faded sign above the door read, "Harlan Logistics," though the name hadn't meant anything in years. Mark parked the rig in the shadow of the building. The silence felt heavy, the kind that knows what's coming. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. A few bare bulbs flickered overhead. Mark used a crowbar to force open a back office, then motioned for Lily to come inside. "You stay put," he said. "I'll check the perimeter." She nodded, her face drawn tight. Mark moved through the shadows like the soldier he used to be. Quiet, methodical, reading the dark for what it hid. The whole place was still. He found no sign of recent use, just old pallets, a rusted forklift, and silence. He was heading back toward the office when a noise cracked the stillness, a soft scrape, rubber on concrete. He stopped. "Lily?" he called. No answer. The sound came again, closer now. He turned just as the first figure stepped out from behind a stack of crates. Then another, then a third. The lead man smiled, the same polite, predatory smile Mark remembered from the rest area. "Evening again, driver," he said. "Appreciate you bringing her back to us." Mark's stomach dropped. The phone call, the warehouse. He'd been herded here like cattle. "How'd you find us?" "Let's just say we keep good records." The man gestured toward the office. "Now be smart. Step aside." Mark didn't move. "She's not going anywhere with you." The man sighed, almost regretful. "That's the wrong answer." The first punch came fast. Mark ducked, years of training flaring to life before he could think. The second man swung a pipe. Mark caught the blow with his shoulder. Pain exploded, white and sharp. He slammed his elbow back, felt bone give. Then everything happened at once. Movement, shouts, the metallic echo of violence. Mark grabbed a wrench from the floor and swung. The sound it made wasn't the sound of metal hitting metal. He took one man down, then another. The third pulled a knife. Mark caught the glint just before the blade grazed his side. Warmth spread under his shirt. Blood. He drove forward anyway, slamming the man against a crate until the knife clattered away. "Run!" he shouted. Lily was already out of the office, eyes wide with terror. She bolted through the side door into the night. Mark staggered after her, pressing a hand to his side. The warehouse burned behind him in light and noise. Engines, shouts, boots. He fired up the truck, heart hammering. Lily climbed in, shaking. "You're bleeding." "Not dead yet." The rig lurched forward, gears grinding. Behind them, the black van roared to life. Headlights flared, slicing through the dark. Mark slammed the accelerator. The truck surged down the dirt road, trailer bouncing like a wild animal. Bullets cracked against the rear doors, sparks flaring. "Get down!" he yelled. Lily ducked, hands over her head. The chase tore through the night, diesel thunder and gunfire and the scream of tires. Mark's shoulder burned, his vision tunneling, but his hand stayed steady on the wheel. He took a hard turn onto an unmarked road, headlights cutting across open field. The truck slammed through a fence, plowing into dry grass. The van followed, close now. Mark spotted a drainage ditch ahead, deep and dark. He hit the brakes, yanked the wheel, and let the truck skid sideways. The trailer swung wide, smashing into the van with a roar. Metal screamed. Glass burst. The world jolted to a stop. For a moment, there was only the sound of hissing air and the ticking of the engine cooling. Lily looked up. "Are they?" Mark stared through the shattered mirror at the wreck behind them. Smoke rose, thick and black. He exhaled, slow and ragged. "They're done." She swallowed hard. "You're hurt bad." He glanced down at his blood-soaked shirt and forced a grim smile. "I've had worse. You need a hospital. Can't risk it." "Then what?" He shifted the truck into gear. "Then we keep driving." And they didn't speak for a long time. The sky ahead was beginning to lighten, faint pink along the edges. Lily finally said, "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah," Mark murmured. "I did." His vision blurred for a second. The wound was deeper than he'd let on. He gritted his teeth and kept the wheel straight. Behind them, the warehouse fire burned against the dawn, a monument to the moment when everything changed. Mark didn't know if they'd live to see Denver, but he knew this much. He was done running from things. Now he was running at them. The morning came up slow, dragging the world out of the dark one color at a time. Kansas looked calm again, like the night hadn't screamed through it. But inside the cab, the smell of blood and diesel hung heavy. Mark's left side throbbed with each heartbeat. The wound wasn't deep enough to kill him fast, but deep enough to make every breath hurt. He'd wrapped it in a strip of torn shirt, tight as he could manage while steering. The fabric was already soaked through. Lily sat beside him, pale and shaking, eyes locked on the road. Her hands were red from trying to help him. She hadn't said much since the fight. Shock had turned her quiet, but the quiet was better than the panic. "You're losing too much blood," she said finally. "I've lost more than this." "That's not comforting." He gave her a sideways glance, a ghost of a smile twitching at the corner of his mouth. "Wasn't trying to be." She looked at him, eyes glistening. "You should have let me run. They were after me, not you." "Yeah, well, too late for that." He shifted the truck into a higher gear, wincing. "You ever notice life doesn't take returns?" Lily didn't answer. She stared out at the endless fields sliding by, the land so flat it made the sky look like it was pressing down on them. After a while, she said, "How far to Denver?" 250, maybe 260 miles. Depends on how alive this truck feels. You can't make that without help." He didn't respond. His vision was starting to swim at the edges. Every bump in the road sent a pulse of fire through his side. She rummaged through the back of the cab, came up with a first aid kit. "Pull over." He shook his head. "We stop, we're targets." "Then slow down." Her tone left no room for argument. Mark eased off the gas, letting the rig rumble onto the shoulder. Lily opened the kit, hands trembling but determined. "Move your hand." He hesitated, then did as she said. The bandage was slick with blood. She peeled it back carefully. He hissed through his teeth. "You any good at this?" "No," she said. "But you don't have better options." She cleaned the wound with water from a bottle, biting her lip as she worked. Then she wrapped him tight with gauze and tape, the movements surprisingly steady. When she was done, she sat back, breathless. "There. You'll live. Appreciate the optimism." She gave a shaky laugh. "You're welcome." Mark leaned his head back against the seat, eyes half closed. The road noise felt like ocean waves in his skull. "You ever been scared like that before?" Lily asked quietly. He opened one eye. "What, last night?" "Yeah." He thought about it. "Once. Afghanistan. We were pinned down outside Ghazni. No air cover, no backup, just dust, noise, and time. That's the thing about fear, it's patient. It waits till you're quiet, then it talks." "What did it say?" He met her eyes. "That I wasn't ready to die. Not yet." Lily nodded slowly. "You think that's why you helped me?" He smiled without humor. "No. I helped you because I was tired of not helping." They sat in silence again. The wind moved through the fields, making the wheat shimmer like water. After a while, she said, "When you were fighting last night, you looked like you didn't care if you lived or died." Mark's jaw tightened. "That's not true." "Then what was it?" He stared at the horizon. It was me remembering who I used to be. The words hung between them. Lily shifted in her seat, studying him. "You think we'll make it?" Yeah, he said after a moment. We'll make it. She didn't know if he meant it for her or for himself. By noon, they'd crossed into Colorado. The land began to rise in soft waves, and the air grew thinner, cleaner. The radio caught a local station for the first time in hours, a woman's voice reading the news. Something about a violent incident near Dodge City. Authorities investigating an explosion. Mark turned the volume down. You think that was us? Lily asked. He kept his eyes forward. Doesn't matter. Just means they're looking. They pulled into a truck stop outside Lamar, a lonely patch of cracked concrete and vending machines. Mark checked his mirrors twice before shutting down the engine. I'm gonna rest a bit, he said. Lily frowned. You can't sleep here. Just an hour. Mark. He looked at her, and she stopped. There was something in his face, a quiet exhaustion that went deeper than blood loss. Wake me if anyone gets too interested, he said. He was asleep within minutes, his breathing uneven, but steady. Lily watched him, feeling the strange ache of gratitude and guilt mixing in her chest. She thought of how many people had looked away, how many doors had stayed closed. And now here was this broken man, bleeding for her without asking anything in return. She sat there for a long time, watching the horizon shimmer. A new sound came then, the low growl of an engine pulling in behind them. Lily froze. 2 black SUVs, no plates. Her hand shook as she reached for Mark's shoulder. Mark, she whispered. He didn't move. Mark, she hissed louder. His eyes snapped open. One look at her face, and he was awake all the way. How many? 2. He reached for the ignition. Guess nap time's over. The engine roared to life. As the truck lunged forward, Lily saw the men step out of the SUVs, same dark clothes, same posture. One of them raised a radio to his mouth. Mark floored it. The truck shot onto the highway, tires screaming. Lily gripped the dash. What are you doing? Finishing what they started. The roar of pursuit filled the mirrors again. And this time, there would be no running. The highway west of Lamar cut through the plains like a scar. Straight, endless, and merciless. The air shimmered with heat, and the horizon looked too far away to ever reach. Mark gripped the wheel with both hands, knuckles white, blood seeping through the gauze under his shirt. Behind them, the black SUVs ate up the distance, their engines howling in unison. Whoever ran this operation had called in reinforcements. This wasn't a few desperate men anymore. This was the system closing ranks. Lily crouched in the seat beside him, watching the mirrors. They're gaining. I see them. They won't stop, will they? Not till I give them a reason to. He shifted gears, forcing the engine to roar. The speedometer needle climbed past 60, then 70. The whole truck shuddered from the strain. Mark, this thing wasn't built for racing. He cracked a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Neither was I. The road ahead forked. One route veered west toward Pueblo, the other cut north toward a cluster of old mining towns. Mark took the northern road without thinking. Less traffic, more places to disappear. For the first time since the chase began, Lily spoke without fear. You don't have to do this. You could drop me off. Let me run. Not happening. Why? Because the minute I do, they'll stop chasing me and start chasing you. She stared at him. You could die. Everybody dies, he said flatly. Not everybody gets a say in what for. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, honest. When they drove until the landscape turned rougher. Low hills, scrub, the kind of country that hid things for a living. An abandoned gas station appeared at the bend of the road, its windows gone, its sign rusted to nothing but a letter or two. Mark slowed, then pulled off behind the crumbling structure. He cut the engine. A sudden quiet rang in their ears. Lily turned to him. "What are you doing?" "Thinking," he said, reaching into the glove box. He pulled out an old burner phone wrapped in duct tape. The thing was scratched to hell, but still worked. "You're calling someone?" she asked. He nodded. "My ex-wife, Maggie." Lily's eyebrows rose. "The one in Denver?" "That's the one." He hesitated, thumb hovering over the power button. "She works with the kind of people who can help you. Shelters, safe houses, that sort of thing. But if I call her, I'm putting her right in the line of fire." Lily looked at him for a long moment. "So, what's the alternative?" He met her eyes. "Drive until they catch us. That's the choice." She swallowed. What would she say? He gave a dry laugh. "She'd say I'm a stubborn bastard who can't stay out of trouble." "Sounds like she knows you." He smiled faintly, then powered on the phone. The screen lit up, weak but alive. He scrolled through old contacts until he found her number, one he hadn't dialed in 3 years. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice. "This is Maggie." Mark's throat tightened. "Hey, Mags, it's me." A long silence. Then, "Mark, Jesus, are you okay?" "Define okay." "What happened?" He hesitated. "I've got a girl with me. 17, maybe 18. She's in trouble. Real trouble. I'm bringing her to you." Maggie's tone shifted instantly. Professional, focused. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind that comes in black vans." Another pause. Then, "All right, there's a shelter on the south side. I'll send you the address. Come straight there. No stops." "Mags, what?" "Thanks." Her voice softened just a little. "You always did have a thing for lost causes." The line went dead. Mark sat for a second, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Lily watched him carefully. "She'll help?" "She'll help." He started the truck again, ignoring the fresh wave of pain in his side. The sky ahead was turning that strange copper color that meant storm. Or they hit the highway once more, pushing west. The clouds gathered fast, dragging wind and dust across the plains. Thunder rolled like distant artillery. Lily glanced out the back window. "They're still there." Mark nodded. The SUVs were specks now, but growing larger. "Figures." She gripped the door handle. "What if we don't make it?" He kept his eyes on the road. "Then you run when I tell you to." "No." He glanced at her. "What?" "I said no." Her voice was shaking, but her jaw was set. "I'm done running." He studied her for a long second. There it was, the change he'd been waiting for. The spark that meant she was more than what had happened to her. "Good," he said quietly. "Then let's finish this." The storm broke suddenly. Rain hammering the windshield, the world dissolving into water and noise. Visibility dropped to nothing. Mark turned on the wipers, but they barely kept up. Behind them, the headlights flickered through the rain. Still coming, still hunting. Mark gritted his teeth. "You ready to make a stand?" Lily nodded. "Always." "Then hang on." He downshifted, steering toward a narrow road that disappeared into the hills. The old service road for a mine long closed. It twisted like a snake through the rock, and halfway up there was a tunnel. A perfect place for an ambush. The truck's tires slipped on the mud, but Mark kept it steady. The tunnel mouth loomed ahead, black and hollow. He killed the lights, letting the rig roll into the darkness. The engine idled low, echoing off stone. They waited. Rain pounded the roof. Minutes later, the SUVs appeared, headlights cutting through the downpour, moving slow, careful. Mark leaned close to Lily, voice low. "You see that lever on the dash? The one marked emergency dump? Yeah. When I say now, you pull it." "What does it do?" He smiled faintly. "You'll see." The SUVs drew closer. The first one crept into the tunnel. "Now," Mark whispered. Lily yanked the lever. With a violent hiss, the rear trailer detached. It slid backward, slamming into the mouth of the tunnel just as the SUV tried to enter. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and the sound of twisting steel filled the air. The second SUV swerved, clipping the rock wall. Sparks flew. "Go!" Mark shouted, slamming the gas. The truck shot forward, out of the tunnel and into the storm again. The world was all motion, thunder, rain, and the growl of a dying engine. When they finally hit open road again, Lily was laughing, wild, breathless laughter. "You're insane." Mark grinned through the pain. Been called worse. She looked at him, something fierce and grateful in her eyes. "We're gonna make it, aren't we?" He didn't answer right away. He just watched the lightning split the sky ahead and said quietly, "We're damn sure gonna try." By the time they crossed into Denver County, dawn had burned the storm away. The sky was pale and brittle, streaked with the last gray shreds of cloud. The city rose out of the plains like a promise, or maybe a test. Mark's hands were trembling on the wheel, his bandage soaked again. Every breath hurt, but he didn't slow down. He'd been running for nearly 30 hours, and the truck sounded like it knew it. Lily leaned forward, staring at the skyline. "We're here?" "Almost." His voice was raw. They exited onto a service road lined with warehouses, graffiti, and the ghosts of factories that hadn't worked in 20 years. The address Maggie had sent him glowed on the old phone screen. Haven Outreach, South Federal Boulevard. Mark parked the truck 2 blocks away. He didn't want to lead trouble straight to her door. Lily looked at him, nervous. "What now?" He nodded toward a small church steeple rising behind a cluster of brick buildings. "That's it. They'll take you in." She studied him for a long moment. "You're not coming?" He tried to smile. "Gotta make sure they don't follow. I'll catch up." "No." Her voice was firm, louder than he'd ever heard it. "You're hurt. You can't." "Kid," he said softly. "If they're still out there, they'll come here first. You get inside. Find Maggie. Tell her Mark sent you. She'll understand." Lily's eyes filled. "You'll die." He shrugged. "Maybe. But you'll live. That's the deal." She shook her head. "You can't keep saving everyone." He gave a faint, tired smile. "Guess I'll die trying." For a second, she didn't move. Then suddenly she reached over and hugged him, hard. The motion caught him off guard. She was shaking. So was he. When she pulled back, her eyes were steady. "You better be right behind me. I'll be close." She nodded once, then slipped out of the cab and disappeared down the street toward the shelter. Mark sat for a moment, watching her go, the weight of exhaustion pressing against his bones. He felt the slow, familiar ache of old regrets, the kind that show up like ghosts when you've got nothing left to give them. He started the truck again and rolled it forward, parking at the edge of an empty lot. That's when he saw it. A black SUV turning the corner behind him. His stomach turned to ice. "Of course," he muttered. "Couldn't just end easy, could it?" He climbed out, pulling the tire iron from the toolbox. His shoulders screamed in protest. The SUV slowed, then stopped about 50 yards away. Doors opened. 3 men stepped out. The same kind of men, always the same. Mark felt something cold and simple settle inside him, not fear, not even anger, just purpose. He stepped away from the truck. The sun was rising behind him, low and blinding. The lead man called out, "You think you can stop this? You think one washed-up vet and a scared girl mean anything?" Mark didn't answer. He just kept walking. "You're already dead," the man said. "Yeah," Mark said quietly, "but I'm taking the road with me." He swung first. The iron connected with a dull crack. Then chaos, shouts, fists, the sharp flash of a knife. He fought like a man who'd already decided the ending didn't matter. It didn't last long. The second man's gun came up, glinting in the sunlight. A shot, a sound like thunder inside his ribs. Mark staggered back, the world spinning sideways. The sky turned white, then blue again. He dropped to one knee, blood spreading like a map across his shirt. The men ran. Sirens wailed somewhere far off, faint, then louder. He turned his head toward the shelter. In the distance, he saw Maggie and Lily running toward him, voices echoing his name. He tried to smile. It almost worked. Maggie's face blurred above him, older, sharper than he remembered, but still the same eyes. "You stupid son of a..." He tried to laugh, coughed instead. "Hi, Mags." "Stay with me," she said. "We've got an ambulance coming." Lily knelt beside him, gripping his hand. "You said you'd be close." "I am," he whispered. Maggie pressed against the wound, her hands slick with blood. "You're not dying here. Not like this." Mark looked past her, up at the sky, the clouds breaking open into a clean, blinding blue. "Looks like rain cleared." "Stay awake," she snapped. He tried. God, he tried. But the weight was too much, and the light too gentle. His last thought before the world dimmed was of the road, stretching out forever, quiet, steady, waiting. When Mark opened his eyes again, it was evening. Hospital light, sterile and soft, machines hummed beside him. Maggie sat in the chair by the bed, looking half exhausted, half relieved. "You're a hard man to kill," she said. He tried to grin. "You always said I was stubborn." She leaned forward, tears in her eyes. "You did good, Mark. The girl's safe. They're rounding up the whole network. It's over." He exhaled, long and slow. "Good." There was a quiet moment between them. The kind that belongs to people who used to love each other, and maybe still do, just differently now. "What happens now?" he asked. Maggie smiled faintly. "Now you rest. Then maybe you start over." He closed his eyes, letting the sound of the machines become the hum of the highway again. Somewhere, faintly, he heard Lily's voice in the hall, alive, safe, laughing. And for the first time in years, Mark Boston slept without dreaming of the road. A week later, the morning light over Colorado looked almost unreal. Thin gold spilling through the windshield, dust motes floating like ghosts of the miles behind him. Mark Boston sat in the driver's seat of a new truck, hands loose on the wheel, engine idling low. His shoulder ached under the bandage, but the doctors had cleared him to drive short routes again. He'd thought about saying no. Then he remembered what the road sounded like at dawn, like forgiveness humming through steel, and said yes. He wasn't running freight this time, just empty back roads, a man relearning how to move forward. The hospital had kept him for 3 days. The cops had come, taken statements, asked questions that barely mattered. Maggie had been there for most of it. Stubborn, tired, Still beautiful in that way, only truth makes people. They didn't talk about the past much. There was too much future between them now. Lily had visited every day. She'd brought coffee, doodled on the whiteboard by his bed, filled the room with the kind of restless energy only youth can carry. On the morning he was discharged, she hugged him tight and whispered, "You're my hero." Mark had laughed, the sound rough in his chest. Heroes are just people who didn't have a better idea. She smiled, but her eyes said she didn't believe him. Now, a week later, he was back on the same stretch of highway, Route 64. The asphalt hummed under the tires, familiar and endless. The rest area sign flashed by on his right. Rest Area 64, 1 mile. He thought about driving past, but something in him said stop. He pulled in. The place looked the same. Faded lights, vending machines, a line of weary trees bending against the wind. The same world that had started everything, quiet and ordinary. He parked, killed the engine, and sat for a moment, just breathing. The radio crackled on the dash, static. Then a voice, soft, young, and smiling. "Hey, roadman, if you're hearing this, you made it back to 64. Mark froze. Lily's voice. "Maggie helped me record this before I left Denver. I'm okay. Got a new name, new school, new life. I start classes next week. They said I could pick anywhere, so I picked near the mountains." "Figured you'd like that." Her laugh came through the speaker, bright as sunlight. "Anyway, I left something for you in the vending machine. Coffee, second row from the top. Don't argue, just take it." He couldn't help but smile. The message ended with her last words, quiet but sure. "Thanks for stopping that night. If you ever come this way again, the coffee's on me." The CB went silent. Mark climbed out of the cab, moving slow, his body still stiff from the fight, but stronger than it had any right to be. He crossed the lot and found the vending machine. There, taped to the glass, was a paper cup with a handwritten note. For the man who didn't drive past. He stood there for a long time, the hum of the highway behind him, the sunrise in front. Then he smiled, a small, tired, honest thing, and said to no one, "Guess I'll take that coffee, kid." He walked back to the truck, the cup warm in his hand. The engine rumbled to life, deep and steady. He eased onto the on-ramp, merging with the morning traffic, the world opening wide again. The highway stretched ahead, endless and clean. Somewhere down the line, new routes waited, new chances to be the kind of man he'd almost forgotten how to be. And as the light grew stronger, he found himself whispering to the horizon. Still here, still driving. The rig rolled west, disappearing into the dawn. I'd like to thank you for listening to this story. If it touched you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires new stories and keeps the road alive.